It ain't the left side or the right side, then it must be the fin side. Inside. It ain't the left side or the right side.
Thank you, Solo D. Welcome to another episode of On the Fin Side here with Brian Cat Catanzaro and Paul Pickin. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Spreaker, iTunes, and on YouTube as well. Paul and I are breaking down day 2 of the NFL draft for the Miami Dolphins, who have pick number 54, and also, again, late in the third round, could still be some value. So, Paul, still a lot of very talented players on the board. It's funny that our 2 top guys, Obi Melifonwu and Forrest Lamp, or Obi for you and Forrest Lamp for me, still on the board here at the beginning of the second round, should go relatively quickly here too. So let's go ahead and dive right into our top 5 for that number 54 pick. We still should see some value there. We'll start out with your number 5.
For me, number 5 is Fabien Moreau, the cornerback. I thought before, and I still think now, Miami is going to come out of days 1 and 2 with a safety in a corner. That hasn't changed for me. I think it's a pretty likely scenario. The only way that I see that sliding is there's 1 or 2 defensive ends that might slide to them here that could adjust that, but I definitely think at least 1 safety or 1 corner, possibly both today. And for me, Moreau's the guy that could really... What's that?
Yeah, I'm going to say I'm going to cheat a little bit. I had in number 5, I had really 3 guys pretty even. And Fabien Moreau was one of them. Also Chidobe Awuzie and Quincy Wilson. I'm going to go with Quincy Wilson here too. And I think this is a player that a big boundary cornerback, didn't quite run as fast coming out of Florida, but is a big guy. Matt Miller is very high on him from Bleacher Report. Had him as the 9th best player in the draft for him, but he's kind of alone on an island there. But I like Quincy Wilson. And I think he could be like a Byron Maxwell type in the NFL. He projects that way. But I agree with you. I think the value could be here at defensive back in the second round. My 4th guy is still going to be Jordan Willis. I mean, I know the Dolphins do have 4 defensive ends on their roster in Wake, Branch, now Charles Harris, as well as William Hayes. But you've got to figure over the next year, 2 years max, that Cameron Wake and William Hayes probably aren't going to be there. If you have Jordan Willis on the roster as well, now projecting into the future on the defensive line, you've got Harris, Willis, Ndamukong Suh, Jordan Phillips, and Andre Branch. You have 5 really good players, and then you can sprinkle a few more in along the way. So who would be your number 4?
My number 4 is one of the guys you cheated with, and it's actually Chidobe Awuzie. All the reasons that we talked about at corner, I think he's a guy that can step in immediately. I like him a little bit more than Moreau, but it's a pretty close pairing there for me, and really I like this kid. And to expand on the cornerback position, my number 3 is actually a corner as well. Kevin King's a guy that Miami reportedly was a little bit in love with throughout the draft process, and he's still sitting out there. So if he is still available for Miami to go out and grab, I think there is a possibility there, and I'd like that pairing. I think he could come in and step in, immediately challenge Bobby McCain, and potentially slide out to the border at some point in time.
Yeah, I like Kevin King too. He's somebody that would be very close on that list, but I think I've cheated enough here with the cornerbacks. I've extended 5 to 9 somehow. So, but yeah, Kevin King is a big body type of quarterback. King, Moreau, Awuzie, Quincy Wilson, I think I'd be fine with any of those, and they'd represent some great value. Challenge Maxwell and Tony Lippett and Xavier Howard on the outside. My number 3, I know we're going to disagree on this one. It's going to be Malik Mcdowell from Michigan State. When you look at just physically talented football players, this could be one of the top 5 to 10 players athletically in this draft. I watched him in Michigan State get double and triple teamed all the time. And I watched him a few times get split out as a 4-3 end and just do unbelievable things for a guy that's 6'6", 295. I think on third down, if you put Malik Mcdowell and Charles Harris in the mix, along with Cameron Wake, I think you're keeping Wake and Suh very fresh there. But he does have character concerns. I mean, he was interviewed absolutely terrible at the NFL Draft Combine. A few GMs said he was the worst interview. A handful as well said it was the worst interview they've ever seen. So he's a different animal here. So, but the physical ability you definitely have to take a look at. Number 2 for me, I'm not even going to expand on it because I know you will, is going to be Obi Melifonwu with the safety. I think he would team with Rashad Jones to have a very rangy secondary. Paul, you're number 2 and number 1.
For me, number 2 is a guy that you actually already had on your list, and that's Jordan Willis. I think that Miami could bring him in and slot him at defensive end, really keep Charles Harris at that linebacker spot, and essentially really have some dynamic things that they can do with that front 7 on defense if they have him on board as well. You know, you can kick Andre Branch inside on passing downs. You could potentially kick Jordan Willis inside on passing downs and have Harris put his hand in the dirt. There's so many different aspects that you can play with here that I can't say no to it. It's Miami takes him, I'm going to be a happy camper. For me, number 1, as you stated, I think we all know, I want Obi Melifonwu in aqua and orange or teal and orange or whatever each individual decides it is. But for me, this is a guy that we can pair with Rashad Jones for the next 5 years, and then he'll still be back there for the next decade, making an absolute difference. This is a guy that never played it down as safety until college, and then he learned from somebody Dolphins fans will remember, Paul Pasqualoni, and an even worse coach in Bob Diaco. That's how he learned how to play safety. So can you imagine what he's going to be when he gets real coaching at 6'4", 225, running a 4.4 40 with a 40-something inch vertical, can broad jump almost 12 feet, and can play the run at the line of scrimmage, even though he's not a big hitter. He's a sure tackler. This is just an absolute knock it out of the park if this kid's still available, and he could end up being the steal of the draft.
Yeah, I mean, we've had him on the show here. You can, for our listeners, you can tune back. We've had an interview with Obi Melifonwu as well here on the Fin side. That's not why we both have him very high here. We've seen and we've broken down a lot of film on him. Paul's been telling me about him here for a couple of years. My number 1 is Forrest Lamp, no surprise. I would be surprised if he did not go 34 here today to the Seattle Seahawks. But if the Dolphins can find a way to trade up, it would be, I would prefer it would be for Lamp or Obi Melifonwu, even if it meant giving up that 3rd round pick, even though I like the players projected there in the 3rd round. Paul, speaking of the 3rd round, you know, taking a look here, in the 2nd round, I made a list here of about 15 to 20 players I would be okay with taking in the 2nd round. The odds say that some of those players are gonna drip into the 3rd round, maybe drip down late into the 3rd round too. Who are a few players that you have in mind that you're hoping get to the end of the 3rd round for the Dolphins? Well,
I mean, you can look at the guard spot and with a little bit of center flexibility and a guy like Elflein or Feeney, if they were to slide. I mean, this draft is absolutely weird. Those are 2 guys that really could go in the 2nd round. But again, it's so many draft mix boards are completely blown up at this point, and there's a possibility for those 2 to slide. Another one that could slide in interesting fashion might be Caleb Brantley, the defensive tackle. And 2 more would possibly be Josh Jones and Eddie Jackson for the 3rd round if they do not go Obi here in the 2nd.
Yeah, Dan Feeney's an interesting name. Given that he's purely a guard, maybe he does fall a little bit. Maybe Fabien Moreau falls because he has the pectoral injury. Maybe Malik McDowell does because of how poorly he interviewed. Also, I'm looking at some defensive ends here as well. Derek Rivers and Terrell Basham, they played at Youngstown State in Ohio. Maybe there's going to be some concern here in day 2 that the level of competition may take them a little while. Sidney Jones, the cornerback out of Washington as well. There's talk now that he may be ready by September. Even if you draft him here in the 3rd round, if he falls that far, maybe you can stash him on PUP. Or even redshirt him really this whole first year. And then the 2nd year, you may have a 22, 23-year-old cornerback who should have been a top 10 or top 15 pick. Very interesting there, too. Zach Cunningham also sticks out, the linebacker from Vanderbilt. I don't like him as much as other people do, but a possibility. Safety Marcus Williams from Utah, too, I think could bring that center field ability to pair with Rashad Jones. So several other players left on the board here. So anything else that really sticks out for you, too, heading into day 2?
I like that you mentioned Sidney Jones, to be honest with you. I just want to touch on that really quick. I think he's a guy that if Miami were to come away from rounds 2 and 3 after getting Charles Harris day 1 with Obi Melifonwu and either Rivers or Jones, oh my God, what they just did to that defense is insane. It really is, because like we talked about in a previous episode, Derek Rivers, when you watch him on tape, looks like Cam Wake Jr. And even if he's getting stashed for a year behind Cam Wake and getting playing time down the stretch in the season. There are some amazing things that this team can do. And the Giants showed that one of the big blueprints for winning a Super Bowl is getting to the quarterback. And when you've got Ndamukong Suh, Andre Branch, Charles Harris, Derek Rivers, Cameron Wake, all in the same defense that you can flex and move in different fun ways, you can get after a quarterback. And getting after the quarterback is the way to beat the Patriots. So, hey, maybe they're making some moves here that can take them to that next level if they're able to do some of these things.
Absolutely. I got to tell you, I think I like the second and third round of the draft more than the first round because you just never know what's going to happen. And you start to see that value start to drip down, starts a lot of interesting conversation. And the Dolphins are in a spot right here, too, where defensive end, defensive back, guard, that's where you may start to see this value start to show itself here in day 2 of the draft. So it should be a fun day, and we will wrap up here our day 2 look at the Miami Dolphins and the NFL Draft. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, iTunes, and on Spreaker. And if it's not on the right side and it's not on the left side, it is on the fin side. Solo D, take us home.
It ain't the left side or the right side, and it must be the fin side. Inside. It ain't the left side or the right side, and it must be the fin side. Listen, Dolphins fans across the land all tuning in to see what Brian Cat and